You change your tone so you don't sound too harsh. You shrink your opinions so you don't seem difficult. You smile when you're tired, say, "It's fine," when it isn't, and call it strength. But deep down, there's this quiet exhaustion, the kind that comes from constantly proving your worth to people who wouldn't notice if you stopped trying. And in that exhaustion, something inside you begins to whisper a truth you've been avoiding. Peace doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being free. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. They taught that nothing outside of your control should disturb your mind. Not rejection, not loss, not the opinions of others. Yet most of us live like emotional puppets, reacting to every string that's pulled. But imagine if you could reach a point where no one's approval defines your value, and no one's silence steals your peace. That's real power, the quiet kind, the kind that can't be taken from you. So if you're ready to master your mind, to live with intention, and to learn how to stay unshaken no matter what life throws your way, please subscribe to a philosophy, a way of living rooted in clarity, courage, and calm. Because every time you choose awareness over reaction, you take one step closer to freedom. You go through life thinking you're making choices, that you're acting on your own terms. But if you slow down long enough, if you start to really watch yourself, not from the surface, but from the place deep inside where your reactions are born, you'll see it. The strings. Invisible, yes, but real. Tugged by the moods of others, pulled by silence, by praise, by the slightest shift in someone's tone. You think you're free, but how free can you be if someone's cold look can ruin your day? If a delayed reply has the power to make you question your worth? Most people are walking marionettes, animated not by inner conviction, but by the external signals they've been conditioned to obey. You were taught early that attention is safety, that pleasing others means survival, and so you learned to read every facial twitch, to decode the weight of a sigh, to shape yourself into what the moment demanded. Not because you were weak, but because you didn't yet know there was another way. That way begins with awareness, the kind that doesn't just notice your pain, but asks where it comes from. When someone ignores you and it stings, the hurt isn't in their action. It's in the meaning you assign to it. They pull a string and your entire posture collapses, not because they intended to hurt you, but because you gave them access to something they never earned, your self-perception. This isn't empathy. This isn't sensitivity. It's misdirected awareness. You feel everything, the tension, the rejection, the approval. But without clarity, all that feeling becomes a storm without direction. And storms, left unmanaged, tear through everything. You learn to call this emotional openness. You were told it's a virtue, but the truth is, unguarded openness is just exposure. It means anyone who gets close enough can rearrange your day with a sentence, a whisper, even a look. You don't have boundaries, you have antennas, constantly tuned to the emotional weather outside of you. This is not control, this is not compassion, this is chaos. But the saddest part is how normal it feels. You've lived like this for so long, you think it's just part of being human. You don't question it, you just adapt. Smile when they expect it. Stay silent when they disapprove. Bend. Apologize. Adjust, all the while believing you're doing the right thing, keeping the peace, staying kind, being good. But goodness is not submission, and peace that comes from suppressing yourself isn't peace at all. It's quiet desperation, the kind that eats at you quietly until you no longer recognize the shape of your own mind. The Stoics spoke of freedom not as something granted, but something mastered. Epictetus said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." But how can you master yourself when you don't even know who's pulling your strings? It's subtle the way it happens. You get used to managing other people's discomfort. You become the fixer, the smoother of conflict, the one who always understands. And in return, you start to forget what you think, what you feel, because it's easier to mirror their emotions than to risk confrontation with your own. You call it love. They call it reliability. But inside, you feel more like a shadow than a person, existing in the spaces they leave behind. And yet, this is how most people live. They walk through life waiting for cues, for someone to clap, for someone to nod, for someone to say, "You did well." It doesn't sound dangerous, but it is, because it means you're always performing. Even in your most private moments, you're thinking about the audience. Even when you're alone, you're preparing for their reaction. And so the self, the real self, never gets to breathe. This is the trap. Not that you care, but that you care blindly. Not that you feel, but that you feel without discernment. Your joy, your rage, your insecurity, all of it dangling on threads held by people who may not even know the power they have. And even if they do, what good is it to blame them? You're the one who handed them the strings. But here's the truth most won't tell you. You don't have to live like this. The strings can be cut. Slowly, deliberately, with the sharp edge of self-awareness. You can begin to feel without collapsing, to notice without absorbing, to care without surrendering your peace. But first, you have to be honest, painfully honest, about how much of your emotional life is shaped by other people's behavior. When you smile, is it genuine? When you agree, is it alignment or fear of being judged? When you say yes, is it a decision or a survival tactic? These aren't small questions. They're the blueprint of your freedom. Because once you can see the strings, you can start to loosen them. You can learn what the Stoics taught, that the mind can be trained. That clarity is not something you stumble into, but something you cultivate. Not through detachment from life, but through commitment to truth. Through choosing, moment by moment, not to react to every pull, every signal, every unspoken demand. The world will keep tugging. That's its nature. People will keep pressing buttons, often without even realizing they're doing it. They'll withdraw affection, then offer it again to see if you jump. They'll test your silence. They'll interpret your stillness as weakness. But you don't have to jump anymore. You don't have to explain or chase or prove. You can stand still. Let them tug. Let them wonder. Let them pull on strings that no longer connect to your core. This isn't about becoming numb. It's not about rejecting love or community. It's about reclaiming the ability to choose your response, to give energy with intention, not out of fear, to stop confusing control with connection. The people who truly love you, they don't need strings to keep you close. They don't manipulate your emotions to hold your attention. They don't need you to flinch to feel important. The real work begins when you no longer allow emotional reflex to dictate your direction. When you can pause, reflect, and respond from a grounded place, even when the world tries to drag you back into chaos. This is where sovereignty lives, in the space between the pull and your reaction, in that breath, that pause, that refusal to be moved by anything that doesn't align with who you are becoming. And in that moment, you realize something that shifts everything. You are not your reactions. You are the awareness beneath them. You are the presence that watches, that chooses, that lets go. The strings were never you. They were just distractions, loud, persistent, familiar, but never necessary. Let them fall. Let them dangle in the air with no one left to control. You're not a puppet anymore. You're a presence, silent, steady, and finally, free. There's a kind of quiet exhaustion that comes from constantly adjusting yourself to match the expectations of others. You might not even realize you're doing it most of the time. It starts in small ways. You tell a joke, and they don't laugh. So next time, you don't speak up. You make a decision, and they criticize it. So next time, you hesitate. Over and over again, your identity bends to avoid discomfort, to preserve connection, to feel safe. But eventually, you stop recognizing the person you've become. It's not that anyone forced you to change. It's that somewhere along the way, you gave away pieces of yourself in exchange for acceptance. And the real weight of that trade doesn't hit all at once. It accumulates, slowly, until the silence you use to protect yourself starts to feel like a prison. You tell yourself you're being thoughtful, empathetic, flexible, but what you're really doing is outsourcing your identity. You start to believe that if someone is disappointed in you, you've done something wrong. That if they're distant, you must have failed them. That if they walk away, it means you weren't enough. This is how you lose control. Not because others took it, but because you tied it to things that were never stable to begin with. You hand over your peace in exchange for smiles, for nods, for approval that always feels just out of reach. And when that approval disappears, so does your sense of self. It's not control they have over you, it's influence you never questioned. Every disapproving glance becomes a mirror you hold up to judge yourself. Every delay in their response feels like a punishment. You create entire stories from half-finished sentences and unanswered texts. Not because you're weak, but because you've come to rely on their cues to know how to feel about yourself. You don't just experience rejection, you absorb it. Let it echo in your mind. Let it shape your beliefs. But the truth is, their reactions were never a reflection of you. They were a reflection of them, their mood, their story, their own unresolved fears. And yet, how many times have you let someone's silence convince you that you're not lovable? How often have you let their frustration mean that you're failing? It's easy to forget that the way people treat you is often about their capacity, not your worth. But when your identity is tangled up in their perception, you can't tell the difference. So you chase clarity, you seek reassurance, you apologize when you don't need to, you soften yourself until there's nothing left but the outline of who you used to be. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But you can't become that person while measuring yourself through someone else's eyes. Because their vision will always be clouded by their wounds. Their standards will always be filtered through their own fears. And if you're waiting for them to fully understand you before you feel at peace, you'll be waiting forever." This is where the illusion reveals itself. The belief that if you can just get them to approve of you, you'll finally feel whole. But it's never enough. Even when they nod, even when they say the words you've been craving, it fades. Because their validation might comfort you for a moment, but it can't sustain you. Only self-respect can do that. There's a deep kind of power that comes from realizing you don't need to be understood to be at peace. You don't need to be agreed with to feel secure. You don't need to be praised to stay on your path. And once you see that clearly, you begin to understand the difference between control and illusion. No one is holding you down. You've just been anchoring your value to things outside yourself. You've made your joy conditional, your confidence conditional, your peace conditional, and that is the surest path to disappointment, because the world will always offer inconsistency. People will be distracted, distant, confused, and if your inner world depends on their clarity, you'll be in a constant state of emotional turbulence. The shift begins when you learn to notice the reaction without assigning it meaning. Someone looks away when you're speaking. It could be a dozen things. Maybe they're tired, maybe they're thinking, maybe they're uncomfortable with their own emotions. But it doesn't mean you're not interesting. It doesn't mean you failed. When you let go of needing their response to validate your existence, you become free to simply be. You begin to act from your own truth instead of constantly adjusting to avoid rejection. This doesn't mean becoming careless or self-centered. It means becoming rooted, grounded, aware of your values, your direction, your intention, so much so that you no longer need the world to clap every time you move. You find peace in the doing, not in the reaction it gets. That's what it means to live with integrity, to do what's right not because others notice, but because you do, to speak not for applause, but for truth, to walk your path without begging for permission to exist on it. That kind of self-possession is rare, but it's not unreachable. It starts with catching yourself in those small moments, when you change your tone to sound more acceptable, when you hold back a truth because you're afraid they'll leave, when you say yes, even though everything inside you says no. In those moments you have a choice. You can reinforce the illusion, or you can begin to break it. The work isn't easy. It asks you to sit with discomfort, to watch your own mind try to make sense of silence and uncertainty without rushing to self-blame. It asks you to stop seeking peace from people who are still at war with themselves. It asks you to let go of your need to be seen so you can finally see yourself. And that's where real power lives. In that quiet place where you know who you are and trust it, even when the world is too distracted to notice. When someone disapproves, it still stings, but it doesn't shake you. When someone pulls away, it still hurts, but it doesn't unravel you, because you've untied your identity from their behavior. You've taken back ownership of your inner world, and that changes everything. You start making decisions from alignment, not anxiety. You start creating from authenticity, not approval seeking. You stop living in reaction and start living with purpose. The illusion begins to fade the moment you choose to believe that your worth is not up for debate, that who you are isn't something others get to define, only witness, that you don't need to win people over to prove you belong, because you already do. You always have. The only thing that ever needed changing was your belief that someone else's perception was more important than your own truth. And once you begin to live from that place, that grounded, clear, unshakable place, you no longer fear disapproval. You no longer chase certainty in others. You no longer shrink to be loved. You become your own reference point, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring the right way. About peace, about honesty, about becoming who you truly are. And in that space, nobody has control over you, because there's nothing left to control, just someone standing in their truth, finally free. There's a desperation that doesn't scream. It whispers. It's hidden behind the polite nods, the eager smiles, the compulsive need to explain yourself. It shows up in the way your voice changes depending on who you're speaking to, in how quickly you apologize when there's tension, in how deeply it bothers you when someone doesn't text back, or doesn't laugh at your joke, or forgets to say thank you. That quiet ache, that's emotional hunger. And it isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Because the hungrier you are for validation, the more easily you can be controlled, not by force, but by subtle gestures. A delay in someone's tone becomes punishment. A cold shoulder becomes a crisis. And you, without realizing it, start dancing for a reward that was never guaranteed in the first place. People don't have to hurt you to own you. They just have to notice what you need and withhold it. And when that need is recognition, praise, belonging, you become predictable. Predictability makes you easy to influence. All it takes is a frown to make you doubt yourself. One vague comment to derail your self-esteem. One passive-aggressive gesture, and suddenly your whole sense of peace collapses. Not because the action was loud, but because the space it left inside you was already fragile. And that's what emotional hunger does. It turns your identity into a reaction. You're not living. You're waiting for someone to confirm you, waiting for someone to make you feel worthy. But the truth is, no one can do that for you. Not consistently, not completely, not honestly. Because people are distracted. they're wounded, they're inconsistent, and if your emotional well-being depends on their capacity to validate you at the right time, you'll always feel unstable. You'll live in cycles, high when they praise you, low when they forget you, driven when they notice you, hollow when they don't. That's not love. That's dependency. And dependency, no matter how pretty it looks, always comes with a leash. So many people confuse emotional openness with strength. But strength isn't in the exposure of your feelings. It's in your relationship to them. You can feel everything and still remain centered. You can be vulnerable without being dependent, but only if you learn to meet your own needs first. When you don't, you turn everyone around you into a supplier. You scan their expressions to see how you should feel. You interpret their silence as a sign of your worth. You wait for their nod to know if you're okay, and in doing so, you place your entire emotional life in hands that were never built to hold it. Carl Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because when you do, you stop relying on applause to feel like you're enough. You stop chasing emotional breadcrumbs just to feel fed. You stop needing people to play therapist, parent, savior. And you begin, slowly, steadily, to build the kind of stability that doesn't collapse every time someone disapproves. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the realization that freedom begins the moment you no longer require someone else to confirm your experience. You can still enjoy their company, still love deeply, still connect fully. But the connection is no longer an addiction, it's a choice. Think about how many decisions you've made, not because they were right for you, but because you hoped they'd earn someone's praise. How many times you stayed silent, not out of wisdom, but out of fear of disapproval. How often you've said yes, not because you had the energy, but because you couldn't stand the thought of disappointing someone. That's emotional slavery. It doesn't look like chains, but it feels like suffocation. And the worst part is how quietly it disguises itself as being kind, loyal, selfless. But what's kind about abandoning your own needs just to avoid discomfort? What's loyal about betraying yourself to keep someone else satisfied? What's selfless about staying silent when everything in you wants to speak? You're not being virtuous. You're being controlled by fear, by habit, by a hunger that keeps you chasing approval instead of choosing authenticity. The moment you stop craving their validation is the moment you become unreadable, not because you're playing games, but because you've stepped outside the emotional economy most people live in. You no longer trade behavior for praise. You no longer shape your identity around being liked. You no longer adjust your truth to avoid making others uncomfortable. And that kind of presence is rare. It's disruptive. People don't know what to do with someone who doesn't need to be liked, who doesn't need to explain, who doesn't need anything but their own alignment. When you show up like that, you confuse the systems that were built to keep you small. Because those systems, manipulation, guilt, passive aggression, they all rely on your hunger. Take that hunger away, and the system breaks down. The insults lose their sting, the silence loses its grip, the praise loses its power. You can enjoy it when it's offered, but you're no longer addicted to it. That's where real peace lives, not in being untouched, but in being unshaken. This doesn't mean shutting down or becoming numb. It means becoming intentional. You feel everything, but you no longer flinch. You notice everything, but you no longer chase. You hear the criticism, but you don't absorb it. You see the silence, but you don't fill it with stories. You let people be who they are, without turning their behavior into a reflection of your worth. Because you've done the work, you've built something inside that can't be undone by someone else's mood. You've anchored yourself in something deeper than praise. You've decided that your energy, your peace, your truth, those things are too precious to place in the hands of someone else's reaction. And from that place, every choice you make becomes cleaner, every boundary becomes easier, every relationship becomes clearer. Not perfect, but clear. And clarity is what ends the hunger. Because hunger comes from confusion, from believing that love has to hurt, that peace has to be earned, that you need to be chosen to matter. But once you see the illusion, it stops holding power. You stop explaining yourself to people who want to misunderstand you. You stop overgiving to people who are only there when it's convenient. You stop trying to fix people who aren't even trying to fix themselves. And instead, you turn inward, not to retreat, but to reclaim. You realize that approval is nice, but it's not fuel. That praise is kind, but it's not purpose. That attention is comforting, but it's not truth. And in that space, you find something no one can give you, and no one can take away. Inner stillness, the kind that doesn't rise and fall with every opinion, the kind that doesn't chase applause, the kind that doesn't starve for love. It simply is, grounded, quiet, whole. And that's where real strength begins, not with control, not with performance, but with presence. You show up, fully, authentically, without needing anything back. And ironically, that's what draws people in. Not your need, but your wholeness. Not your hunger, but your enoughness. Because people are drawn to those who aren't trying to be anything, who've already accepted themselves completely. When you get there, you stop chasing the echo of love and start embodying it. You stop begging to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And slowly, that hunger that once ruled you fades. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you finally started feeding yourself with something real, something permanent, something that doesn't disappear the moment someone else changes their mind. There's something admirable about being someone who cares. It means your heart is open, your empathy is alive, and you're willing to carry the emotional weight that others drop at your feet. But somewhere along the line, caring becomes a burden. Not because the world needs less kindness, but because you've been offering your attention, your time, your loyalty, without boundaries. You've poured yourself into people who never asked how much it cost. You show up first, stay the longest, listen the most, and yet you're often the one who's left unseen. That pain doesn't come from the act of caring. It comes from the realization that your effort hasn't been met with reciprocity. You keep giving, hoping it'll be enough to earn what should have been freely given. And in doing so, you exhaust your own capacity to stay connected to yourself. Not all caring is created equal. There's a kind of caring that lifts and restores, and then there's a kind that slowly chips away at your peace. You don't notice it at first. It shows up as saying yes when you're tired, as listening deeply when no one ever listens back, as checking in on people who haven't thought about you in weeks, and you justify it by saying you're the strong one, that it's just who you are. But being someone who cares deeply doesn't mean you should become someone who cares endlessly. When your compassion turns into currency, spent constantly on people who never look back, you're not being kind, you're being drained. What was once a gift becomes a habit of self-erasure. There's a high cost to being the one who always understands, who always forgives, who always makes room for others to fail while holding yourself to impossible standards. You walk through life open-hearted, only to be met with people who take your openness as an invitation to take more. And when they do, you blame yourself. You think maybe you didn't give enough. Maybe if you were more patient, more available, more loving, they'd finally see you. But that's not how it works. Because people who truly value your presence don't need to be convinced. They recognize the weight of your effort and they carry it with you, not on you. Caring too much, especially for those who only take, teaches you to betray yourself in small, subtle ways. You start tolerating behaviors that make you feel invisible. You start excusing patterns that chip away at your confidence. You mistake intensity for connection, inconsistency for mystery, and you begin to shrink in the hope that someone will finally notice how small you've become. You don't call it self-abandonment, you call it love, loyalty, dedication. But that's a lie you tell yourself to keep from facing the truth. You're bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. Seneca once said, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." And the same applies to your attention. When you spread it too thin, when you give it away without thought, it loses value. It becomes background noise. When you're always available, always agreeable, always forgiving, people stop hearing you. They start to expect you to bend, and every time you do, they respect you a little less. Not out of cruelty, but because you've shown them that your needs can always wait, that your time is always flexible, that your heart is always open, even when it's hurting. And while that may look like strength on the surface, it often stems from fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of disappointing someone, fear of being alone. But the truth is, the more you care without discernment, the more you teach people to treat you as an option, as a convenience. You condition them to believe that no matter what they do, you'll still be there. And slowly, the roles shift. You become the emotional caretaker, the one holding the pieces together, while they drift in and out of your life as they please. And yet, you stay. Not because it feels good, but because you've tied your identity to being needed, to being useful, to being the one who holds the door open even when no one says thank you. That kind of caring doesn't build connection, it breeds resentment. You don't realize how heavy it's gotten until you're lying awake at night, wondering why you feel so empty. You've been feeding others while starving yourself. You've been handing out pieces of your energy like it's limitless. And when you finally break, when you finally stop showing up, they'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being distant, cold, selfish. But what they really mean is, you stopped making their comfort your responsibility. And maybe that's what you need to do. To stop treating your compassion like an endless well. To recognize that you can care and still say no. That love doesn't mean tolerating chaos. That empathy doesn't mean accepting disrespect. You can be soft without being used. You can be kind without being a doormat. And you can choose to protect your peace without feeling guilty. This shift doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring wisely. You begin to ask, who adds value to my life? Who reciprocates? Who sees me not just when they need something, but when I'm struggling in silence? These questions don't make you bitter. They make you responsible for your energy, your time, your emotional health. And in answering them honestly, you start to rebuild trust with yourself. You stop overriding your gut to make others comfortable. You stop abandoning your needs to earn approval. You learn to sit with the discomfort of someone else's disappointment, because your peace is worth more than their temporary satisfaction. When you care with boundaries, your love becomes clearer, stronger, healthier. People know where you stand. They know your time is sacred. Your energy is sacred. You are sacred. And the ones who truly value you will rise to meet that standard. They won't see your limits as rejection. They'll see them as clarity. And that clarity will filter out the ones who were only ever there for the benefits, not the bond. There's no shame in having a big heart. The shame is in letting that heart be trampled by those who never learned how to hold it. It's not your job to teach someone how to treat you by tolerating mistreatment. Your job is to show up as fully yourself, to give from overflow, not from depletion, because when you give while drained, it's not love, it's survival. And love, real love, can't bloom in a survival state. You deserve to be held with the same care you offer others. You deserve to be chosen with the same energy you've given to people who never picked you back. And the moment you decide to stop bleeding for the ungrateful, the moment you stop throwing your energy into empty hands, everything shifts. You come back to yourself. You rebuild your reserves. You remember that your caring is a gift, not a guarantee. In time, you'll learn to give without losing, to love without forgetting yourself, to care deeply and still choose peace. That's not detachment. That's emotional maturity. That's the wisdom that comes when you finally realize not everyone deserves access to your heart. And the more carefully you guard it, the more clearly you'll see who was meant to stand beside you, not because you bent for them, but because you stood firm for yourself. There's a strange truth that most people never see until it's too late. You're not shaped by what happens to you, but by how you respond to it. You spend your days reacting to people's moods, reacting to tones in their voices, reacting to silence, to criticism, to the things left unsaid. And without realizing it, every reaction is a small surrender, a silent signal that says, "You have access to me. You can alter my state." The sigh of a loved one, a sarcastic laugh, a passive-aggressive pause, these things don't have to be loud to be powerful, because you've already taught the world how to move you. And when people learn how to move you, they also learn how to control you. Reaction is not just an emotional impulse, it's a form of programming. The more you react to a trigger, the more deeply it roots into your nervous system. It becomes a habit, a loop. You walk into a room, read everyone's mood, and before you've even spoken, you've shifted into whatever version of yourself you think will be most accepted. That shift doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like instinct. But it isn't instinct. It's conditioning, and it's dangerous. Because the more you live this way, the less of your life is actually yours. You're not responding from intention, you're echoing what the world throws at you. And echoes don't build anything. They only repeat what's already been said. You think you're making decisions, but in truth, you're just reacting faster than you're thinking. Someone frowns and your mood dips. Someone praises you and your confidence spikes. Someone disagrees and you second-guess your truth. This is the trap. The illusion that your emotions are caused by events, when really they're caused by how much of your worth is still hooked into those events. The world doesn't control you, but the parts of you that are still unfinished, still insecure, still longing for validation, those parts respond to everything, loudly, desperately, predictably. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's what happens when you live in reaction. You're not choosing, you're being driven by fears you haven't faced, by wounds you haven't healed, by stories you keep repeating, and worst of all, by people who learned, whether intentionally or not, how to provoke you. You start trying to control how others see you, not realizing they're controlling how you see yourself. But here's the shift, the subtle, powerful truth that starts to unravel the whole system. Not everything deserves your attention. Not every insult needs a defense. Not every moment of discomfort needs to be fixed. The strongest people are not the loudest. They're the ones who can hold their silence when it would be easier to argue. They're the ones who can observe a situation without becoming it. They know how to feel something without reacting to it. And in doing so, they remain free. Freedom is not just about what you can do. It's about what no longer has power over you. When someone disrespects you and you don't flinch, that's freedom. When someone withdraws their love and you don't chase, that's freedom. When someone tries to bait you into explaining yourself and you simply choose not to play the game, that's freedom. It's not apathy, it's mastery. It's the quiet strength of knowing who you are without needing to prove it. The problem is that we've been taught to take everything personally. Every glance, every delay in response, every change in someone's tone. We interpret these things as reflections of our value, and so we react, not to the moment, but to what we've made the moment mean. That's why it hurts. Not because it's true, but because it touches the places where we're still unsure. But if you pause, if you breathe before reacting, you start to see through the moment. You realize their tone has nothing to do with you. Their silence isn't your fault. Their mood isn't your responsibility. You can care, but you don't have to carry. When you stop reacting, people don't know what to do with you, because most relationships are built on reaction, on push and pull, on reward and punishment. And when you step outside that loop, when you stop mirroring their behavior, it forces them to look inward, to see themselves without the distraction of your response. And that moment, that mirrorless silence, is where transformation begins. Not always for them, but definitely for you. This is what it means to reclaim your power. Not to overpower others, but to stop being overpowered by them. To choose your energy instead of leaking it. To know your value without outsourcing it. To walk through the world unbothered, not because you don't feel, but because you've trained yourself to act from clarity, not emotion. That's a discipline, a daily practice, but it's one that changes everything. Because you become what you react to. And if all you ever react to is negativity, drama, and manipulation, you slowly become shaped by it. You think you're fighting it, but you're feeding it. You think you're protecting your truth, but you're actually handing it over, again and again, by letting others dictate your emotional state. But when you step back, when you observe instead of absorb, you change the whole dynamic. You shift from puppet to presence, from reactor to observer, from victim to sovereign. You start to feel the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you find yourself, your real self, the one that doesn't rush to explain, the one that doesn't perform for love, the one that doesn't try to earn worthiness through compliance. That self has always been there. It just got buried under the noise of reaction. But now, with each choice to stay grounded, each moment you choose silence over chaos, you bring that self back to life. There will always be people who try to test you, who poke, provoke, push. Not always out of malice, sometimes just out of habit. But that's not your business. Your business is your response, your presence, your peace. And the more you choose that peace, the more untouchable you become. Not in a prideful way, but in a deeply centered one. You walk through life rooted, steady, not because the world is calm, but because you are. And in that steadiness, everything changes. Conversations become cleaner. Boundaries become clearer. Love becomes healthier. Not because others have changed, but because you have. You're no longer the echo. You're the voice. You're no longer shaped by what triggers you. You're shaped by what you choose. And that choice, repeated over time, becomes your freedom. Not the kind someone else gives you, the kind you give yourself. There's a strange kind of pressure we all feel, the pressure to respond, to explain, to justify our presence in every room and every conversation. The moment something feels off, we rush to fill the silence, to defend our choices, to prove we meant well. And somewhere in all that talking, all that over-explaining, we begin to lose our center. We give away the very thing that made us grounded to begin with. But silence is something else entirely. Silence isn't weakness, it isn't surrender, it isn't avoidance. Real silence, the kind that comes from deep clarity, is a kind of strength most people never learn to wield, because it requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your truth, trust that you don't have to perform emotional gymnastics for someone else to understand you. When you learn to sit in silence, especially when everything in you wants to react, you're not bottling things up. You're mastering your state. You're saying without a single word, I am not available for chaos. That kind of stillness isn't easy, especially if you were raised to believe that being heard means being loud, or that being right means proving your point. But more often than not, those who yell the most are the most unsure. And those who defend themselves the hardest are usually the most afraid of being misunderstood. Silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've evolved past the need to be constantly understood. There's a particular discomfort that shows up when you stop reacting. People expect your buttons to be easy to push. They've come to rely on your need to respond, to explain, to fix. So when you say nothing, when you hold your ground in stillness, it unnerves them. It reflects something back they weren't ready to see. Their own noise, their own need for control, their own discomfort with their behavior. And suddenly, they can't hide behind your reaction anymore. They're left with their own words, their own tone, their own silence. That's the power of not playing the game, of choosing presence over performance. You don't always have to answer every accusation. You don't have to engage every criticism. You don't have to reply to every disrespect with a lecture about your boundaries. Sometimes the deepest clarity is found in quietness. And the strongest statement you can make is no statement at all. The noise of the world is constant. People projecting, attacking, baiting, performing. And if you get swept into it every time, you lose yourself in the volume. But when you remain still, when you resist the urge to fight every battle, you become unshakable, not because you don't care, but because you've chosen what's worth your energy. Carl Jung once said, "A man is not what he says he is what he does." But I'd argue he's also what he doesn't do, what he walks away from, what he lets go unanswered. There's a discipline in choosing when to engage and when to simply observe. That choice, made again and again, trains your nervous system to stop jumping at every invitation to chaos. It teaches you how to stay rooted when others are spiraling. It teaches you how to hold your dignity in moments that used to pull you into desperation. And that's what silence protects, your dignity. Because when you over-explain, when you chase understanding, when you react just to prove a point, you're often trying to rescue someone else from their discomfort. But their discomfort isn't yours to fix. If your truth makes them uncomfortable, that's theirs to sit with. Your silence isn't an absence. It's a presence they can't manipulate. It's the absence of emotional hunger, the absence of needing to be validated, justified, or redeemed. And that absence makes people uncomfortable because it means they can no longer use your reaction as a mirror to avoid facing themselves. Stillness is not about ego, it's about sovereignty. It's about learning how to sit with tension without becoming it, learning how to pause instead of react, to breathe instead of argue, to listen instead of interrupt, and most importantly, to observe the situation for what it is, not what your fear wants to make it. That kind of mastery doesn't come overnight. It's built one choice at a time, one moment of holding your tongue when you're tempted to defend, one decision to walk away rather than escalate, one deep breath when you're on the edge of reacting to something that doesn't even deserve a response. And over time, that practice becomes a part of you. You stop wasting energy on things that used to consume you. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You stop needing closure from people who were never capable of giving it. Because you realize your peace is too expensive to spend on cheap invitations to drama. You don't have to react to prove you care. You don't have to speak to assert your power. And you don't have to fight to protect something that's already yours. Stillness isn't passive. It's deeply intentional. It's a form of self-respect that doesn't announce itself, but is felt in every interaction. You walk differently when you're not constantly seeking approval. You speak differently when you're not desperate to be heard. And you carry yourself differently when you've stopped needing to prove your worth in conversations that were never designed to see it. That's when your silence becomes magnetic. Not because it's a tactic, but because it comes from truth. People might not understand this kind of silence. They might call it cold, distant, uncaring. But that's because they're used to your over-accessibility, your immediate availability, your willingness to explain yourself until you're exhausted. When you stop doing that, it shifts the power dynamic. And not everyone will like that. But the ones who are meant to stay will respect it, because they'll feel something different in your presence. Not the echo of performance, but the steadiness of someone who finally knows they don't need to react to everything that moves. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be heard, but when your need to be heard makes you give your peace away, it's time to reevaluate what you're truly fighting for. Silence doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen not to bleed for things that don't feed you, not to argue for truths that don't need defending, not to explain yourself to people who have already made up their minds. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your reaction, your engagement, silence is rebellion. And not a loud, messy rebellion, a quiet, focused one, the kind that says, I no longer need your understanding to feel whole. I no longer need your agreement to feel valid. I no longer need this moment to end in applause. I only need to be grounded in myself. And when you can sit in that space, when you can watch the chaos swirl around you and still remain centered, you've reached a level of control that can't be faked. You've stopped being moved by every storm because you've become the anchor. That's not emptiness, that's mastery. And it's one of the rarest, most powerful forms of self-possession you can ever develop. There's a quiet kind of power that doesn't need a crowd, doesn't need applause, and certainly doesn't beg for validation. It's the power of the person who can walk away, not out of bitterness, not out of anger, but from a place of calm certainty that their worth is not up for negotiation. Most people have been trained to believe that strength lies in staying, in holding on, in proving your loyalty by tolerating things that chip away at your peace. But real strength, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice, is found in letting go when your presence is no longer honored. It's the decision to stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to hear you. It's the act of leaving the table when love starts to feel like currency instead of connection. Some people don't want resolution. They want confusion. Not because they're evil, but because your uncertainty gives them control. As long as you're questioning yourself, they don't have to question their behavior. As long as you're trying to fix it, they can stay broken. That confusion keeps you reaching, needing, chasing. You replay conversations, try to decode their silence, analyze every shift in tone, not because you don't know what happened, but because you've convinced yourself there has to be something more, some hidden meaning that will finally make it make sense. But often there isn't. Sometimes the lack of clarity is the message. And here's where most people get stuck. They think that walking away means they gave up, that letting go is a sign of weakness, that silence is surrender. But it's none of those things. It's wisdom. It's self-trust. It's knowing that not everyone deserves to sit at the table of your life just because they once made you feel seen. And yes, the ending may be confusing. It may feel incomplete. But closure doesn't come from them. It comes from the moment you decide your dignity is worth more than their inconsistency. The world doesn't prepare you for this kind of strength. It celebrates endurance, not discernment. It tells you to fight for people, even when they've stopped showing up for you. But what if the real fight is walking away from the cycles that keep stealing your peace? What if the battle is choosing silence over another argument, solitude over half-love, clarity over chaos? It's not easy. In fact, it may be the hardest thing you'll ever do. But once you do it, once you walk away without the need to be understood, you reclaim something that no one else can give you: your power. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And that's exactly what some people do when confronted with the consequences of how they've treated you. Instead of reflecting, they deflect. Instead of apologizing, they vanish. Instead of changing, they blame. But your healing isn't about getting them to face themselves. It's about you choosing not to lose yourself while waiting. You don't have to punish them. You don't have to make a dramatic exit. You simply stop participating in your own pain. That's what makes detachment so powerful. It doesn't scream. It doesn't prove. It just exits, gracefully, quietly, but unmistakably. And because it's rare, it's unforgettable. People remember the ones who didn't fight to stay, the ones who didn't chase, the ones who simply recognized their worth and acted accordingly. It leaves a mark, not because you made a scene, but because you didn't. But getting to that place requires honesty, radical honesty. With yourself, you have to admit where you've been holding on out of fear, where you've mistaken loyalty for self-abandonment, where you've accepted crumbs and called it a feast. You can't walk away until you realize you're already gone emotionally, just waiting for the courage to follow through physically. And once that realization hits, the rest becomes a matter of alignment. Because walking away isn't about giving up on people. It's about returning to yourself, to the version of you that doesn't have to earn love, to the version of you that remembers peace is your default, not a reward. You don't need to convince anyone of your value. You don't need to stay where you're only conditionally welcomed. You don't need to keep knocking on a door that's already closed from the inside. The right people won't need you to explain your boundaries. They'll recognize them. The right people won't confuse your stillness for weakness. They'll respect it. And yet it's not about them. It's never been about them. The real lesson in walking away is realizing that your time, your energy, your love, it all has value. And when you give it to people who cannot or will not honor it, you teach yourself to settle. But when you withhold it, not as punishment, but as protection, you teach yourself something far greater, that your peace matters, that your presence is a privilege, that your silence, when chosen from self-respect, speaks louder than any argument ever could. People might not understand your silence. They might try to provoke you back into reaction, back into the chaos that once kept you tied to them. Don't fall for it. Don't confuse their confusion for a sign that you should have done more. Your clarity is not their comfort, and you don't owe anyone the version of you that suffered just to keep the peace. What you owe is to the self that endured too long, stayed too long, gave too much. That self deserves a new story, one that begins the moment you walk away. And that's the thing, they'll feel it, even if they never admit it. Your absence will echo in places your presence once kept warm, not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you finally stopped hurting yourself. You stopped accepting explanations that made no sense. You stopped responding to messages that said nothing. You stopped playing roles that were never written for you, and you chose peace, not because it was easy, but because it was time. There's a stillness in that decision, a kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. It's in the way you stop justifying yourself, in the way you reclaim your mornings, in the way you smile, not for someone else, but for the weight that's finally lifted off your chest. And though no one may see the work behind it, you'll know. You'll feel it in your body, in your breath, in your mind. That lightness, that space, that sense of coming home to yourself. Walking away doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence, with doubt, with grief. But don't mistake discomfort for the wrong decision. Some endings are necessary for beginnings to happen. And some doors must close quietly so you can hear yourself think again. Not everyone is meant to walk the path with you. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey. But you are meant to move forward. With grace, with clarity, with peace. So when the moment comes, and it will, don't hesitate. Walk away, not because they don't matter, but because you finally do. And that is a kind of power the world doesn't teach you, but it's the only kind that sets you free. Life has a way of teaching us that fairness is an illusion. We're taught to believe that if we're good, if we're kind, if we try our best, things will balance out, that the world rewards integrity and punishes deceit. But as you get older, you begin to see how fragile that belief really is. The world doesn't always play fair. In fact, it rarely does. People don't always treat you the way you deserve. Sometimes they misunderstand you, sometimes they betray you, and sometimes they simply move on, leaving you to pick up the pieces. And here's the hardest part. Often they'll never come back to apologize, and the apology you're waiting for may never come. Expecting fairness from a world that doesn't care is how you keep yourself trapped in the past. You end up waiting for them to come to their senses, waiting for the apology that will never come, waiting for justice that might never be served. And the longer you wait, the more you tie your happiness to someone else's actions, to things you can't control. When you keep waiting for someone else to fix what they've broken, you remain a prisoner to their behavior. You stay stuck, locked in a cycle of hoping that they'll finally recognize your worth, finally acknowledge your pain, finally see the truth of who you are and how you've been treated. The problem isn't that they don't owe you an apology. The problem is that you're still giving them the power to control your emotional state, even when they've already moved on. And that's where you lose yourself, because the only thing keeping you tied to the past is the hope that things will be made right. But life doesn't work that way. People don't always acknowledge their mistakes, and closure doesn't always come when you want it. So you can keep waiting, or you can decide to stop letting their actions dictate your peace. The truth is, closure isn't something that someone else gives you. It's something you give yourself. Waiting for them to come back and fix what's broken only prolongs your suffering. And it's not because you don't deserve closure or justice or acknowledgement. You do. But the reality is, expecting fairness from people who benefit from your silence only keeps you in the same place. It keeps you bound to them, mentally and emotionally, when they've already moved forward. And while you're waiting, your own life continues to slip by. You keep letting their actions influence your thoughts, your peace, and your joy. But the truth is, your peace has always been in your hands. The moment you realize that you don't need them to make things right is the moment you break free. You stop needing them to acknowledge the hurt. You stop expecting them to see the damage they've caused. You stop living in a state of waiting, hoping and longing for things that may never happen. Instead, you reclaim the power to decide that what happened no longer holds power over you. You make the choice to stop letting their actions define your emotional state. You realize that you've been waiting for a validation that wasn't coming, and that by continuing to wait, you're choosing to stay stuck in a place that no longer serves you. And that's when everything changes. When you stop waiting, you stop giving them control over your mind, your energy, and your emotions. You realize that justice doesn't always come in the form of an apology. It doesn't always come in the form of an explanation. Sometimes it comes in the form of letting go. Letting go of the idea that they owe you something. Letting go of the story you've been telling yourself that says, if they just knew how much this hurt, if they just acknowledged me, everything would be better. You take back the power you gave away. You stop expecting them to make things right because you start realizing that you have the power to make it irrelevant. You have the power to release yourself from the chains of waiting. You stop giving them the emotional energy they don't deserve and start investing that energy in yourself. In that moment, you reclaim your peace. And that peace doesn't come from the outside world. It doesn't come from the apology you're waiting for. It doesn't come from the acknowledgement of your pain. It comes from within. It comes from the realization that you don't need them to validate you because you've already validated yourself. You don't need them to give you closure because you've already closed that chapter. You don't need their apology because you've already forgiven, not for them, but for you. You've released yourself from the story they're no longer a part of, and that's where your true power lies, inside you, in the ability to move on, to choose peace, and to stop expecting fairness from a world that has no interest in providing it. This is not about ignoring the wrongs that have been done to you. This is not about pretending that what happened didn't matter. It did. You were hurt. But the key is realizing that continuing to let that hurt control you keeps you in a cycle of pain. You don't heal by holding on to what they did or didn't do. You heal by deciding that it no longer has the power to dictate your life. You heal by understanding that while fairness may not always be served, your peace can still be yours. As Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And that's the essence of taking back your life. You stop being defined by what was done to you and start defining who you are and where you're going. You don't have to fight to be heard by those who won't listen. You don't have to chase people who don't care. You don't have to wait for people to recognize your worth because you've already recognized it for yourself. And that's when you stop giving power away to things that no longer serve you. It's not about becoming bitter or cold. It's about becoming empowered. It's about realizing that you have everything you need to move forward, no matter what anyone else does. Your happiness, your peace, your freedom, these are yours to create. Stop waiting for someone else to make it happen. Stop expecting fairness from a world that doesn't owe you anything. Take control of your own story and let go of the things that are holding you back. The only closure you need is the one you give yourself. The only justice you need is the one you create in your own life. And when you do that, you'll see how much power you've been holding all along. We often forget how much energy we give away. Every time someone asks for your time, your attention, your care, there's a cost. It's not just a passing favor or a moment of kindness. It's an exchange of your emotional and mental currency. And yet, most people walk through life acting as though their energy is limitless. They give without thinking, they react without pause, and they invest themselves in things and people that drain them. The truth is, your energy is one of the most valuable things you have. Once it's spent, you can't get it back. It's not just a resource, it's your life force. And when you keep handing it away freely, you leave yourself with nothing but emptiness. Think about the last time someone made a request of you, and you instantly said yes without considering your own needs. Or the time you found yourself caught in an emotional conversation, one that took far more from you than it gave. These moments are small, but they add up. And slowly, bit by bit, you begin to feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and resentful. The thing is, you're not tired because you gave to someone else. You're tired because you didn't guard your energy. You didn't treat your peace like the valuable asset it is. You let it slip through your fingers because you thought someone else's needs were more important than your own. Guarding your energy doesn't mean being cold or selfish. It means being intentional. It means understanding that your emotional and mental resources are limited and using them wisely. You wouldn't hand over your savings to just anyone. So why do it with your energy? Protecting your peace means recognizing that you don't need to be everywhere, do everything, or fix every problem that comes your way. You need to learn how to say no, not because you don't care, but because you know that you can't give your best to others if you're giving away all of yourself. When you start treating your energy like currency, you begin to understand that not every situation is worth the price. Imagine a king who has a crown, a symbol of his authority, his rule, his very essence. He doesn't just let anyone touch it. He doesn't give it away carelessly. He guards it fiercely because he understands that if it's lost or stolen, his power is compromised. Your peace, your energy, is like that crown. Once it's gone, nothing else shines. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't offer support or love if you're constantly running on fumes. And yet, we let people, situations, and even our own thoughts rob us of that precious energy. We let anxiety, guilt, and the fear of disappointing others dictate how much we give. But no one else is going to guard your peace for you. It's your job to protect it. It's your responsibility to set boundaries, to say no when needed, and to keep your energy in reserve for the things and people who truly deserve it. It's not about being unkind or withdrawing from the world. It's about being deliberate with where you invest your emotional and mental resources. Just like you would choose where to invest your money, you should be thoughtful about where you invest your energy. Are the people you're giving to contributing to your well-being, or are they draining you? Are the projects you're working on aligning with your values, or are they pulling you away from what really matters? When you begin to treat your energy as currency, you start to notice how much you've been spending on things that don't serve you. And once you realize that, you can start making better choices about how and where you invest. When you protect your energy, you start to notice a shift. You begin to feel more grounded, more focused, more capable of handling the challenges that come your way. You realize that it's not about having more time or more resources. It's about making better use of what you have. You stop letting other people's needs dictate your emotional state. You stop feeling guilty for saying no. And most importantly, you stop burning yourself out trying to please everyone else. Instead, you focus on what truly matters. You make room for the things that nourish you, and you let go of the things that drain you. But here's the catch. The moment you start protecting your energy, you'll notice something interesting. People will begin to respect you more. Not because you're demanding respect, but because you're showing them that your peace is not for sale. People who once took you for granted will start to notice that you're no longer available at their convenience. They'll start to recognize that you're no longer the person they can lean on without offering something in return. And while that might feel uncomfortable at first, it's a sign of growth. You're teaching others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And that's when the balance shifts. You start getting back the energy you've been giving away for so long. You start attracting relationships and opportunities that honor your boundaries, your peace, and your needs. Protecting your energy is a revolutionary act. It's an act of self-love and self-respect, and it's the only way to truly thrive in a world that's constantly trying to drain you. When you understand that your energy is a limited resource, you begin to make choices that align with your well-being. You stop wasting time on things that don't add value to your life. You stop engaging with people who don't appreciate your presence. And most importantly, you stop running on empty, knowing that you can't give your best to anyone if you don't take care of yourself first. So, ask yourself, how are you spending your energy? Are you treating it like currency, or are you giving it away without thought? Are you investing it in things that matter, or are you letting others deplete you? Your energy is a gift. It's the fuel that powers everything you do. Protect it, guard it, invest it wisely, because once it's gone, nothing else shines. And when you finally realize the value of your own energy, you'll see how much you've been giving away to things that didn't deserve it. It's time to take that energy back, time to protect it like gold. We all do it. We look at people, at their actions or lack thereof, and we twist them into something they're not. We see someone's inconsistency and tell ourselves, they must be busy. We watch them pull away and we tell ourselves, it's just timing. We make excuses for their absence, their silence, their failure to show up for us. But deep down, we know the truth. We know when someone wants to be there. We know when they're invested, when they're present, when they care. And yet, we choose to ignore it. We choose to believe the story we've created in our minds, the one that says, if I wait long enough, if I'm patient enough, they'll come around. But the truth is, if someone truly wanted to be there, they would be. Clarity doesn't come when you keep making excuses for other people's behavior. It comes when you finally face the truth of what their actions are telling you. This is the trap we fall into. We project potential onto people who have already shown us who they are. We believe that if we give them time, if we keep being patient, if we keep giving, they'll eventually show up. But that's not how it works. People don't change because we wait for them. They change because they choose to. And that's where the real pain lies. When you've given so much of yourself to someone who's not reciprocating, it's not just about them, it's about you. You've allowed your sense of worth to be tied to their behavior. You've allowed their inconsistency to define your emotional state. And the longer you wait for them to prove their love or loyalty, the more you lose yourself in the process. You keep telling yourself, maybe tomorrow, maybe next time, maybe just a little more patience, and then they'll finally see me. But by the time they do, or worse, if they never do, you've already spent too much of yourself trying to convince them of your worth. But you can't become who you truly are if you keep molding yourself into someone you think others will accept. You can't discover your true value if you keep waiting for someone else to acknowledge it. Real clarity comes when you stop making excuses for the people who leave you wondering. When you stop convincing yourself that their silence means they're too busy, or that their absence is just a matter of timing. When you stop bending your reality to fit their inability to show up for you. You can't build your life around the hope that someone else will change. Your peace doesn't live in someone else's decisions. It lives in your own choices. It lives in your ability to see things clearly, without the lens of expectation clouding your judgment. The reality is, when people are meant to be in your life, they don't make you wonder where you stand. They don't leave you questioning whether you matter. They don't make you chase after their attention, their affection, or their approval. And the moment you stop excusing their absence and start demanding clarity from the relationship you have with yourself, things begin to shift. You stop measuring your worth based on their actions. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your value. You stop chasing approval and start living from a place of wholeness, from a place where you define your worth, not based on what others give you, but based on who you are and what you bring into the world. There's a powerful moment of realization that comes when you stop excusing confusion. You start seeing the people around you for who they truly are, not who you want them to be. And when that happens, the world gets a lot simpler. You stop trying to fix things that were never broken. You stop trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. You stop apologizing for things that weren't your fault in the first place. And in that simplicity, there's peace. You stop reacting to others' emotional chaos and start creating your own clarity. You start deciding what's acceptable in your life and what isn't. And you stop living on the hope that people will change. You live with the confidence that you are enough, regardless of what they choose to give you. Clarity isn't about forcing people to meet your expectations. It's about letting go of expectations altogether. It's about seeing people for who they truly are and deciding what role you're willing to let them play in your life. And the moment you make that decision, when you stop forcing relationships to work that aren't meant to work, you free yourself. You free yourself from the emotional roller coaster of constant disappointment. You free yourself from the confusion that keeps you trapped in a cycle of hope and hurt. And most importantly, you free yourself from the need for validation from anyone other than yourself. It's not easy to let go of the need for validation. It's not easy to stop waiting for people to show up when they've already shown you who they are. But it's necessary, because when you let go of the need for approval, you make room for your own self-worth to grow. You stop measuring your value based on their actions, their attention, their words, and you start defining it for yourself. You start creating a life where your happiness, your peace, and your success aren't dependent on anyone else's behavior. You become the source of your own validation, the creator of your own clarity. And when you do that, you stop chasing after things that were never meant to be yours. You stop chasing after people who aren't ready to show up for you, and you start attracting the kind of relationships that are built on mutual respect, on honesty, on understanding. And here's the truth no one likes to hear. You can't fix people. You can't make them see your worth if they're not ready to. You can't change their behavior if they're not willing to change. But you can change how you react. You can change how you value yourself. And when you do that, you no longer have to chase after people to prove you're worthy. You no longer have to convince anyone to see you. You simply become someone who doesn't need to explain themselves. You become someone who knows their worth, regardless of whether anyone else sees it. And that's the power you've always had. The power to define yourself, to release others from the burden of having to understand you, to stop making excuses for their behavior and start making space for your own clarity. The moment you stop projecting potential onto people who have already shown you their limits, you step into your own power. You stop making excuses for confusion, and you start making room for peace. You stop trying to mold yourself into someone else's idea of who you should be, and you start embracing the freedom of being who you truly are. And when that happens, everything changes. You stop chasing after people who don't see you, and you start attracting the ones who will. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth, and you start living from a place where you already know your value. And that's when you become truly free. Free from the need to explain, free from the need to prove, and free to live life on your own terms. It's easy to react. The world hands us situations all the time that push our buttons. People who are rude, moments of injustice, things not going our way. It's so tempting to scream, to lash out, to defend ourselves at the top of our lungs. But here's the thing. You don't rise by reacting louder. You rise by responding smarter. It's in the moments when you don't react that your true power shows up. When everything inside you wants to explode, when your emotions are shouting at you to retaliate or defend, but you choose stillness, that's when you're mastering yourself. We live in a world that's built on immediate responses. Social media thrives on quick reactions. Arguments are fought in real time, and our minds are constantly being trained to react instead of think. But here's the thing most people miss. Your reactions don't define you. Your responses do. Reactions come from instinct. They're automatic, driven by emotions, fears, and conditioning. But a response, that's where your power lies. A response is a choice. It's deliberate. It's measured. It takes awareness. And the moment you choose your response over your reaction, you step into a new level of control. Carl Jung said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." This applies perfectly to how you handle life's challenges. It's not about what you want to do or what you say you would do if given the chance. It's about how you act, especially when your emotions are running high. In every situation you're given a choice. Do you react or do you respond? A reaction is quick, impulsive, and often tied to your ego or insecurities. It's a defense mechanism, a reflex, something you do out of fear or frustration. But a response is intentional. It comes from a place of clarity and strength. It doesn't give in to the noise around you. It doesn't react out of impulse. It responds out of wisdom. There's a sense of power that comes with this kind of control. When you can sit with discomfort, when you can hear criticism or feel rejection and not allow it to shake you, you hold the reins of your emotional state. It's like a muscle. The more you practice staying calm, the stronger you become in handling difficult emotions. Most people give up their power the moment they let someone else's behavior dictate how they feel. They allow insults to break their peace, delays to stir up frustration, and rejections to lower their worth. But you don't have to live that way. You don't have to allow external forces to pull you out of alignment. The key is learning to control your response. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or numb. It doesn't mean you stop caring or suppress your feelings. Far from it. It means you learn to recognize your feelings without letting them control your actions. You feel anger, but you don't let it fuel a reaction. You feel hurt, but you don't let it drive you to self-doubt. You acknowledge the discomfort without letting it dictate your actions. That's true emotional mastery. It's not about never feeling anything. It's about choosing how to channel those emotions in a way that serves you instead of sabotaging you. The world will always test your emotional boundaries. People will criticize you. Life will challenge you. Situations will not always go your way. But each of these moments presents an opportunity to respond instead of react. You can choose how you show up in each moment, how you carry yourself through adversity. And the more you practice this, the more you realize that your peace is in your hands, not in anyone else's. When you master your reactions, you master your reality. Your emotional state no longer depends on what happens around you. It depends on what happens within you. And that's a power no one can take away. Think about the times you've lost your temper, said things you regret, or acted in a way that you later wished you hadn't. Every one of those moments is a missed opportunity for growth. When you react impulsively, you don't just lose your peace in the moment, you give up your power. But when you take a breath, pause and respond with intention, you gain control. And that control doesn't just affect that one situation. It ripples through every area of your life. You become someone who doesn't get knocked over by every wave of emotion. You become someone who stands steady, who knows how to weather any storm, because you know that your peace is not up for grabs. It's yours to maintain, and no one can take it unless you let them. The key is to become aware of your triggers, to understand what makes you react and why. The more you understand your own patterns, the better equipped you are to handle difficult situations without falling into old, unconscious reactions. You start to see the underlying fears, insecurities, and emotions that drive you to respond impulsively. And when you recognize them, you can choose to respond with wisdom instead of reacting out of habit. It's like having the power to press pause before you act. You stop yourself in the moment, reflect, and then decide the best course of action from a place of calm and clarity. The power to master your reactions is one of the greatest forms of self-respect. When you don't let the world move you at its whim, when you don't react to every slight or provocation, you demonstrate a strength that goes beyond mere willpower. You show up for yourself. You choose peace over drama, clarity over confusion, strength over weakness. And over time, this becomes a habit. You don't have to think about it. It becomes second nature to hold your ground, to stay calm in the storm, to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. And that's when you realize something profound. Your reactions are not your destiny. You don't have to be at the mercy of life's chaos. You don't have to be defined by your emotions. You are not your anger, your frustration, or your sadness. Those are just feelings. They don't need to control you. When you respond instead of react, you align with a higher sense of purpose. You make decisions from a place of strength, not fear. You no longer hand over your emotional power to external circumstances. You hold it firmly in your own hands. And that's when everything begins to shift. So remember, mastering your reactions isn't about avoiding your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about learning to navigate them without being swept away. It's about knowing that you always have a choice. Your response is always yours to control, and the moment you take responsibility for how you respond to the world, you step into a power that is yours alone. You stop being a passenger in your own life, and you start driving it. And that, my friends, is how you master everything, not by fighting or pushing back, but by choosing how you respond, calmly, wisely, and with the unwavering knowledge that your peace is yours to protect. Most people live in quiet fear of being misunderstood, of being seen through a distorted lens, of being labeled something they're not: cold, bitter, arrogant, selfish. The urge to explain, to defend, to clarify becomes so loud that it drowns out your own inner voice. But what if the freedom you're looking for isn't found in being understood, but in finally letting go of that need altogether? What if peace begins not when the world sees you clearly, but when you stop trying to make them? When you evolve, when you heal, when you change direction, you will confuse people who have only ever known the old version of you. They won't always celebrate your growth. In fact, they might resent it. They might say you've changed, when all you've really done is stop performing. You stopped playing the role they were comfortable with. You stopped shrinking to fit their expectations, and that unsettles people. So they'll create their own story to make sense of it. A version that puts them at ease, even if it puts you in a box. But you are not here to be put in boxes. You are not here to bend yourself in half just to be digestible to everyone else. You are not a character in someone else's narrative. You're the author of your own. The truth is, your silence, your distance, your boundaries, they threaten those who were never interested in understanding you to begin with. They were interested in controlling your access, in shaping your energy around their needs. And when you start choosing yourself, when you stop explaining yourself, they feel that shift, so they label it. That's the art of being misunderstood. It's not a tragedy, it's a form of quiet power, the ability to let people think what they want and not lose sleep over it. The strength to allow false perceptions to exist without rushing in to correct them. Because at some point, you realize that truth doesn't need a spotlight. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need to be seen. It just is. It lives in your choices, in your consistency, in the peace that no longer flinches when someone gets you wrong. There's a certain kind of calm that comes when you no longer rush to explain your silence, when you no longer justify your decisions, when you allow people to sit with their own discomfort instead of trying to make it easier for them by shrinking yourself. The truth is, not everyone will understand why you walk away, why you stay quiet, why you don't react. But that doesn't make your choice wrong. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is not defend your peace, but simply live it. There's also a kind of strength in not needing to prove anything. You don't owe the world a detailed account of your healing. You don't owe anyone a backstage pass to your transformation. If they didn't ask the right questions when they had access to you, they don't deserve the answers now. Let them wonder. Let them twist your story. Let them sit in confusion, because those who truly know you will never need an explanation, and those who demand one probably never listened in the first place. When you understand this deeply, a shift happens. You stop internalizing misinterpretations as your fault. You stop believing that if someone misunderstands you, it means you failed to communicate. It often means they weren't willing to receive you in the first place. Some people don't want clarity. They want confirmation. They want to confirm the story they already decided about you. And the more you try to explain yourself, the deeper you sink into their illusion. That's why it's powerful to stop explaining, to stop arguing, to stop clarifying things that your actions have already made clear. Because every time you explain, you hand over a piece of your energy. You trade your calm for the hope of being seen accurately. And that's a losing game. You cannot force someone to see what they're unwilling to look at. You cannot drag someone to understanding if they're invested in misunderstanding you. So you let go. Let go of the need to control the narrative. Let go of the desire to be seen in a good light. Let go of the habit of proving your worth. You are not a campaign. You don't need votes. Your truth is not up for public approval. You can be at peace and still be misunderstood. You can love deeply and still walk away. You can care and still be distant. You can be healing and still be silent. And none of that makes you cold. It makes you aware. The moment you stop chasing after validation, you step into something greater, self-respect. You start to move from a different place, a place rooted in quiet certainty rather than constant negotiation. You no longer spend your energy trying to fix other people's perceptions. You use that energy to build, to grow, to protect what's sacred inside you. And in that stillness, you find a kind of power that doesn't shout. It simply exists. There will always be those who misunderstand your quiet as arrogance, your distance as bitterness, your boundaries as attitude. That's okay. Let them. You are not here to manage everyone's emotional response to your healing. You're here to be real. And real doesn't always look soft or sweet or perfectly digestible. Sometimes real looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like saying nothing at all. And in a world obsessed with performance, that's rebellion. Because the truth doesn't perform. It doesn't beg. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase after people waving its hands trying to be acknowledged. It simply stands, steady, whole, unapologetic. And when you stand in your truth like that, unshaken, unbothered, you become unforgettable. Not because everyone gets you, but because you no longer need them to. You become magnetic in your mystery, grounded in your refusal to explain. So let them think what they want. Let them sit in their assumptions. Let them label your silence however they need to. You're not responsible for their peace. You're responsible for your own. And when you start protecting that, really protecting it, the world stops having so much power over you. You stop dancing for their comfort. You stop shrinking for their understanding. And finally, you breathe. That breath, that quiet, unshaken breath, is freedom. The kind that doesn't ask to be seen. The kind that doesn't need to be clapped for. The kind that just exists, peaceful, still, whole. And from that place, you no longer need to be understood, because you've finally understood yourself. There's a strange habit many of us fall into without even noticing, trying to find peace in the very people who keep stealing it. We call it connection, we call it loyalty, we call it love. But sometimes what we're really doing is abandoning ourselves just to hold on to someone who feels familiar. And familiarity, when it's born from pain, can be a dangerous illusion. You may start to believe that exhaustion is normal, that walking on eggshells is love, that constant self-editing is just part of being close to someone. But peace isn't found in the arms of those who exhaust you. It's preserved by walking away from those who demand too much of your soul. If every conversation leaves you drained, if you always leave feeling smaller than when you arrived, it's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. Energy doesn't lie. You might try to explain it away. You'll say, they're just going through something, or I'm just being too sensitive. But there comes a point where honesty has to outweigh hope. You can't keep hoping that someone who repeatedly brings you storms will suddenly start bringing you calm. You can't keep planting your heart in places where the soil rejects you and then wonder why nothing ever grows. People will show you who they are through the way they treat your silence, through the way they respond to your softness. If every time you open up you get cut, it's not that you're too emotional, it's that you're giving emotional access to people who haven't earned it. That's the painful truth. Your vulnerability is sacred. It's not meant for those who turn it into ammunition. You weren't made to bleed for someone else's comfort. You weren't made to beg for someone else's attention, and you definitely weren't made to sacrifice your peace so someone else can feel powerful. Some people only know how to relate through chaos. They don't feel seen unless there's conflict. They don't feel alive unless there's tension. And when you bring peace into that equation, they will try to break it, not because you're doing something wrong, but because they don't know how to exist in a space that doesn't feed their inner storm. They crave the fight. They thrive in the drama. And slowly, they train you to respond to life the same way. Until one day, you can't tell the difference between love and stress. That's when you start losing yourself. Slowly, quietly. You begin to question your instincts. You overthink your every word. You become hyper-aware of tone, of timing, of how much space you're allowed to take up. You start calling it being careful. But what it really is fear. The fear of being too much, the fear of setting boundaries, the fear of finally choosing yourself. Because for so long, your peace was tied to their approval, your worth was wrapped in their validation. But the moment you start seeing it clearly, something shifts. You begin to reclaim your power, not with a scream, but with a boundary. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." And bravery in this case is choosing to walk away from people who confuse your kindness with weakness. It's deciding that you will no longer participate in dynamics where your peace is the price of admission. Because peace isn't something they give you. It's something you protect from them. It's not earned by pleasing, it's kept by guarding. And when you start doing that, really doing that, the world around you changes. You start noticing how different your body feels in certain rooms, how much lighter your chest becomes when you're not anticipating the next jab, how much brighter your thoughts become when you're not mentally rehearsing how to survive the next conversation. That's your nervous system finally exhaling. That's your mind finally stepping out of survival mode. And it's in that stillness that you realize peace was never a place to arrive at. It was a boundary to build. But boundaries come with consequences. They disturb people who were comfortable walking all over you. They confuse people who relied on your silence. They upset those who only felt big when you made yourself small. And yes, setting boundaries might mean losing some people. But here's the truth. If protecting your peace cost you a relationship, it was never love. If being authentic causes distance, then closeness was never real. Real love doesn't demand that you shrink. It doesn't resent your growth. It doesn't punish your honesty. So, stop making excuses for their chaos. Stop romanticizing your own discomfort. Stop calling it love when it's really just emotional debt. You don't owe your past self the continuation of patterns that no longer serve you. You don't have to keep showing up for people who make you feel like your feelings are a problem to be solved rather than something sacred to be held. Your energy is a limited resource, and not everyone deserves access to it. It's okay to outgrow people who taught you pain. It's okay to choose silence over arguments. It's okay to choose solitude over tension. It's okay to want ease. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Because wisdom isn't just about knowing what to do, it's about knowing what to walk away from. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is stop participating in relationships that keep you spiritually sick. They won't always understand. Some will call you distant, cold, selfish. That's fine. Let them. You're not here to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You're not here to teach emotional maturity to people who refuse to grow. You're not here to explain your peace to people who only want your chaos. You are here to build something deeper, something quieter, something real. And that requires space. It requires clarity. It requires saying no, even when your voice shakes. You don't have to turn every relationship into a project. You're not a fixer. You're not a healer on demand. You're not a sponge for someone else's unresolved pain. You're a person, a whole one, with limits, with needs, with a right to protect your spirit. So start choosing environments that nourish you, not deplete you. Start surrounding yourself with people who listen when you speak, not just wait for their turn to talk. People who make you feel safe, not scrutinized, seen, not scanned for flaws. Because when you stop giving your energy to war zones, you create room for peace to take root. And peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up in how you breathe, in how you sleep, in how you show up for yourself when no one's watching. That's the kind of peace worth fighting for. Not the peace of forced smiles and quiet suffering, but the peace of alignment, of wholeness, of finally feeling like you belong in your own life. So if they keep bringing war, stop trying to build peace with them. Stop trying to make it work where you're only ever breaking. Stop giving love to places that confuse it for weakness. Protect your space. Protect your voice. Protect your mind. Because not everyone wants peace. Some people want control. And your job isn't to convince them otherwise. It's to choose differently. Peace isn't a destination. It's a decision. And you don't find it in people. You find it in the moment you realize you don't have to carry what keeps wounding you. That moment, that quiet, clear, powerful moment, is where the war ends and your life begins. Detachment is so often misunderstood. People hear the word and immediately associate it with distance, indifference, even coldness. They think it means shutting off your emotions, building walls, refusing to care. But that's not detachment. Real detachment isn't the absence of feeling, it's the presence of clarity. It's the ability to feel everything fully and still choose wisely. To care deeply without drowning. To love without losing yourself. It's not about becoming numb, it's about becoming precise. Because in this world, emotions can be overwhelming. They rush in uninvited, attach themselves to outcomes, to people, to stories we tell ourselves. You get hurt, not because you feel too much, but because you act on every single feeling like it's a command. You see a red flag and feel hope. You feel rejected and chase validation. You feel desire and confuse it with destiny. But detachment teaches you this. Not every feeling deserves a reaction. Not every impulse deserves your energy. Not every connection is meant to be held on to. There's power in stepping back, not to escape, but to observe, to see things as they are, not as you want them to be. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you're no longer willing to lose sleep over someone else's confusion. It means you can listen without absorbing, watch without reacting, be present without being consumed. It means you've stopped tying your inner state to someone else's behavior. That's not coldness, that's maturity. And the truth is, when you stop attaching yourself to outcomes, to how people should behave, to what should have been said or done, you begin to breathe differently. Your chest feels lighter. Your thoughts grow quieter. You're no longer caught in a mental tug-of-war between what you feel and what's unfolding. You begin to act from a place of alignment, not reactivity, because now you're guided by purpose, not impulse. Carl Jung once said, "Even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness," and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. Detachment is the skill of holding both joy and sorrow, hope and disappointment, without letting either dictate your worth. You don't chase highs because you're not afraid of lows. You're centered, not because nothing moves you, but because you no longer let yourself be thrown off balance by every external wave. And it's this inner stability that people mistake for indifference. But they don't see what it took to get there, the inner storms you've had to face, the emotional fires you've had to walk through, Detachment doesn't come from being untouched by life. It comes from being deeply touched and choosing not to bleed for every wound. You've learned to stay soft but structured, open but not exposed. You've learned to care without carrying. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. One day, you just stop explaining yourself to people who never wanted to understand you. You stop overthinking texts, overanalyzing silences, overvaluing inconsistency. You stop expecting depth from shallow waters. You realize some people aren't meant to meet you where you are. Not because you're too much, but because they're not enough for your truth, for your growth, for the life you're building. And slowly, you pull your energy back, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. You stop engaging in every argument, not because you don't have a response, but because your peace matters more than your point. You stop checking who stayed and who left, because you're more interested in who showed up for you when it was silent. You detach, not because you're above it all, but because you're done being below yourself. This kind of detachment is not easy. It's not natural at first. We're wired to cling, to define ourselves through what we can hold, what we can keep, who we can please. But the more you evolve, the more you understand that love without detachment is attachment. And attachment, when it's rooted in fear, leads to suffering. Because you start loving to avoid loss, giving to avoid guilt, staying to avoid being alone. But when you detach, you start loving from a place of choice, not need. You give because it's real, not because you're afraid. You stay because it aligns, not because you fear absence. And with this shift, you begin to ask better questions. Not, do they like me? But, do I feel respected in their presence? Not, why did they leave? But, why was I holding on to someone who kept slipping away? Not, how can I prove I'm worthy? But, why do I need to prove something that should be felt? Detachment brings these questions to light. It invites you into a higher conversation with yourself, a quieter one where you're no longer chasing peace through noise or self-worth through performance. You're simply being. And in that state of being, your decisions change. You start choosing rest over resistance, truth over illusion, growth over comfort. You start moving from a place of inner power, not outer approval. People won't always understand this version of you. Some will say you've changed, others will say you've hardened. But they're just witnessing a part of you they never earned access to before. They're seeing a version of you that no longer leaks energy to be liked, a version that's rooted, not restless, clear, not chaotic, selective, not closed. Because this is what detachment truly is. It's emotional precision. You still feel deeply, but you channel those feelings into things that actually matter. You stop trying to be everything to everyone and start being everything to yourself. You realize that you don't have to be available to people who confuse access with entitlement. You don't have to prove your care through self-sacrifice. You don't have to say yes to things that drain you just because they're wrapped in guilt. You begin to protect your peace the way a warrior protects sacred ground, quietly, firmly, relentlessly, not by shutting down, but by sharpening your awareness, not by isolating, but by elevating. You realize that detachment isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of conscious connection. It's what allows you to be present without possession, engaged without entangled. It's what allows love to flow freely without turning into dependency. And when you live from this place, everything shifts. Your standards rise, your tolerance drops. Your circle gets smaller, but your peace gets bigger. You stop over-explaining and start observing. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop giving yourself away and start building yourself up. So the next time someone accuses you of being distant, cold, or too quiet, let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them mislabel. You're not here to manage everyone's perception. You're here to master your alignment. And if staying true to yourself makes some people uncomfortable, let them sit with that. Because you've sat with your discomfort for far too long, trying to be what everyone else needed. Now, it's your turn to need yourself. Detachment is not coldness. It's wisdom. It's self-respect. It's peace with boundaries. It's feeling deeply, but not being ruled by what you feel. It's being present, but not possessed. It's love without losing. And it's what happens when you stop trying to control the world and start learning to master your place in it. There comes a point in life when you realize that your peace is the only thing worth protecting. The world is full of noise, drama, and people who will try to pull you into their chaos. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwinds of other people's problems, to let their moods dictate your own, to allow their expectations to weigh on you. But here's the truth. Nothing and nobody will ever affect you again, not because you've built walls to keep people out, but because you've built discernment to know who and what is worth your time and energy. You don't need to shut people out completely, but you learn to choose who deserves your presence and who doesn't. It's not about becoming cold or numb. It's not about rejecting love, joy, or connection. It's about realizing that you have the power to decide where to invest your emotional energy, and more importantly, where not to. You don't have to explain yourself to those who misunderstand you. You don't have to defend your decisions to people who can't see your truth. You don't have to dance for approval or beg for acceptance. What if instead you stood still, rooted, anchored, in your own truth, in your own peace? The moment you stop letting external forces dictate how you feel or respond, you start to experience life in a completely different way. You stop giving energy to chaos, to confusion, to negativity. Many people live their lives as reactors, constantly responding to what happens around them without ever thinking about what's happening within them. Life becomes a series of automatic reactions to situations, people, and events. But when you build discernment, when you learn to choose your responses wisely, you stop being a puppet to life's whims. Instead, you take back your power. You begin to respond consciously, not from fear or obligation, but from clarity and strength. You become the one in control, not because you've become indifferent or distant, but because you've learned how to prioritize your peace over everything else. And when you do that, life doesn't get to toss you around anymore. You stop being at the mercy of other people's moods, their judgments, and their expectations. You become grounded in yourself. If you're constantly giving away your energy to situations that drain you, to people who disrespect your boundaries, to chaos that has nothing to do with you, you're essentially choosing to give up your power. But when you choose peace, when you choose to not react, to not explain, to not chase validation, that's when you reclaim control. You become your own anchor. The storms around you may rage, but they no longer toss you about. Instead, you stand firm, knowing that nothing outside of you can shake the core of who you are. In a world where everyone seems to want something from you, where everyone has an opinion about how you should be or what you should do, the ability to say no becomes one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. Not because you want to isolate yourself, but because you want to protect your peace. Not every person deserves your energy. Not every situation requires your emotional investment. You have a finite amount of emotional bandwidth, and you get to decide how to spend it. And the more you choose to guard it, the more you realize just how precious it is. When your peace becomes your priority, it's like flipping a switch. You stop chasing things that drain you, and you start attracting things that nourish you. You start to notice the difference between people who add to your life and those who take from it. Those who give without asking, without expecting, without manipulating, and those who want you to be a part of their chaos, who want you to fight their battles, who want you to explain yourself over and over again. You stop trying to fix things that are beyond your control. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who aren't even willing to see you clearly. You start to realize that your worth is not something that can be handed out for approval, but something that comes from within. And once you realize that, the need to explain, defend, or prove yourself fades away, because you no longer feel the need to convince anyone of your value. You know it for yourself. And in that knowing, in that deep-rooted sense of self, you stop running after approval. You stop waiting for people to notice you, to affirm you, to validate your choices. You stop living for the approval of others and start living for yourself. And that is where freedom begins. The freedom to be who you truly are without apology. The freedom to make decisions based on what feels right for you, not what others think you should do. The freedom to live your life not as a reaction to others, but as a conscious expression of who you are. But this doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of slowly learning to value your own peace more than external validation. It's about noticing the moments when you feel drained, when you feel yourself slipping into old patterns of overgiving or over-explaining, and choosing a different path. It's about learning to say no without guilt, to walk away without regret, and to let go of the need for everyone to understand your choices. The more you do this, the more your peace becomes unshakable. You stop giving away pieces of yourself to people who aren't worthy of them, and you start keeping that energy for the things that truly matter, your goals, your growth, your happiness. You don't need to fight for your peace, you need to protect it. When you prioritize your own peace, you become unbothered by things that once seemed overwhelming. You stop getting caught up in every emotional drama that comes your way. You stop feeling responsible for other people's emotions. You start recognizing that you can feel everything deeply and still choose not to let it control you. And that's the power of detachment. It's not about shutting down. It's not about closing your heart or building walls. It's about becoming selective, about choosing who and what deserves access to your energy and letting go of everything that doesn't. You start making better decisions about where to put your emotional resources. You stop giving to situations that drain you, and you start investing in the things that fuel you. Your energy becomes your currency, and you begin to spend it wisely. You protect your peace the way a king protects his crown, knowing that once it's lost, nothing else in your life will shine. And when your peace becomes your priority, your life becomes your own. You stop reacting to the world and start living in alignment with your true self. You stop explaining yourself to people who will never understand, and you start living for yourself. You stop seeking peace in the approval of others and start creating it within yourself. That's when everything changes. When you prioritize your peace, you give yourself the freedom to finally live life on your own terms. Remember, the moment you stop seeking validation from others is the moment you reclaim your power. Your peace is yours to protect, and once you make it your priority, nothing and no one can shake you. If this resonated with you, make sure to check out the video on the screen and continue your journey toward inner freedom. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal, where your peace is our priority.
Most people spend their entire lives obsessed with what others think of them, while a small minority become obsessed with themselves. And that small difference changes everything. If you are watching this, you've probably reached that moment in your life when you realize it's time to stop living for others and start living for yourself. My name is Carl Jung, and for decades I have explored the inner worlds of the most conscious and evolved minds on the planet, and I have discovered something fascinating. All those who have reached true greatness in any area of life share one thing in common. They are not obsessed with what others think, do, or say about them. They are obsessed with understanding themselves. But here's the question that could transform your entire existence. When was the last time you truly sat down to think about yourself? Not your problems, not your responsibilities, not what others expect from you, but you, who you really are, what you genuinely desire, the person you are becoming with every passing day. The truth is that most of us have spent so much time worrying about others that we've lost connection with ourselves. And that disconnection is precisely what keeps us trapped in lives that don't belong to us, in jobs that don't inspire us, in relationships that don't nourish us, and in an existence that feels more like survival than a full, meaningful life. But today, that can change. I'm going to show you how to become obsessed with yourself in a way that is not selfish, but essential. A way that not only transforms your life, but allows you to serve the world with far more authenticity and power. Let me tell you about a moment that changed my perspective forever. I was in my early 30s, feeling completely lost. I had failed several times, and I was sitting alone in my small apartment, surrounded by the echo of disappointment. I had spent years trying to impress others, following the advice of people who hadn't achieved what I desired, living according to the expectations of my family, my culture, my society. That night, I asked myself a question that shattered everything. If I didn't have to impress anyone, not even one person, what would I do? For the first time in years, I was silent. I didn't have an answer because I had completely lost the connection with myself. That was the night I made the most important decision of my life. I would become a student of my own soul. I would study myself, understand myself, and evolve with the same discipline and passion that a scientist studies the mysteries of the universe. That inner decision, that conscious obsession with self-knowledge, was what carried me from confusion to clarity, from failure to the expansion of consciousness that later inspired thousands. But here's what I want you to understand. Being obsessed with yourself doesn't mean being narcissistic or self-centered. It means becoming the best version of yourself so that you can serve life from abundance, not from emptiness. When you know yourself deeply, when you cultivate your talents and strengthen your character, you become a vessel through which the world can receive something greater. Think about it this way. If you were a healer, wouldn't it be your responsibility to perfect your healing ability? Wouldn't it be selfish not to develop your potential to the fullest? In the same way, it is your moral duty to evolve into the most complete version of yourself, because the world needs the highest expression of who you are. When I speak of being obsessed with yourself, I'm referring to 4 essential dimensions that most people never consciously develop: your conscious mind, your emotional depth, your spiritual growth, and your physical evolution. These 4 areas are not separate. They are parts of one whole. When developed in harmony, they create a powerful inner alchemy that transforms every aspect of your life. Let's begin with your conscious mind. Most people allow their minds to become battlegrounds for random thoughts, external opinions, and mental noise. But those who master life treat their minds as sacred ground. They feed them consciously, exercise them, and direct them toward meaningful goals. Each morning, before exposing your mind to the outside world, you should nourish it with your own chosen input. Read something that expands you, listen to something that uplifts you, reflect on what truly matters. That deliberate discipline is not a coincidence. It's a conscious act of self-possession. Have you noticed how most people start their day? They immediately check their phones, read the news, scroll through social media, surrendering control of their minds to external forces from the very first minute. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, distracted, and lost. A healthy obsession with yourself means you decide what enters your mind, you choose the ideas you focus on, the voices you listen to, the images you consume, because your mind is the soil where your entire life grows. I once met a man who felt completely drained. He told me, "I feel like my life doesn't belong to me. I spend every day responding to the demands of others, solving problems that aren't mine, living according to priorities that aren't mine. By the end of the day, I have no energy left for what truly matters to me." I asked him, "How much time each day do you spend thinking about your own life?" He looked confused. "What do you mean?" "How many minutes a day do you dedicate consciously to your own goals, dreams, and priorities?" After a long silence, he said, "None." That was the problem. He had spent so many years obsessed with others' expectations that he had lost himself entirely. We worked together to create what I called sacred self-reflection time, moments dedicated solely to contemplating his own growth, vision, and direction. The results were extraordinary. Within months, he had regained not only his energy, but a sense of inner purpose and clarity that transformed every area of his life. Because when you become consciously obsessed with yourself, you have infinitely more to give. This leads us to the second dimension, emotional development. Most people live with their emotions on autopilot, reacting to life, letting external events dictate their inner state. But being obsessed with yourself means taking full ownership of your emotional world. I once met a woman who said, "I'm in my 40s and I'm just realizing I never learned how to manage my emotions. I spend days feeling anxious or frustrated, and I don't even know why." I told her something I want you to remember. Your emotions are not something that happens to you. They are something you create. Every emotion is the result of the meaning you give to what happens around you, and those meanings can be transformed consciously. A healthy obsession with yourself means observing your emotional patterns as a scientist would study a natural phenomenon, without judgment, with curiosity, with honesty. Because when you learn to understand your emotions, you stop being their prisoner and become their master. And that is where your real transformation begins. What situations trigger your negative emotions? What specific thoughts arise right before your moments of anxiety or frustration? What strategies truly work to shift your emotional state? Personally, I've developed what I call my emotional toolkit. These are deliberate inner strategies I use whenever I need to shift my emotional state quickly. For example, when frustration surfaces, I immediately ask myself this question: what can I learn from this situation that will make me stronger or wiser? This single question instantly shifts my focus from victimhood to the role of the learner, from resistance to curiosity. Have you ever thought about that? Most people spend more time learning how to use their phones than learning how to manage their own emotions. They study the manual for their car, but they never study the manual for their own mind and heart. And then they wonder why they feel emotionally out of control. Obsessing over yourself means becoming an expert in your own emotional mechanics. It means consciously observing which thoughts and activities elevate you and which ones drain you. It means developing daily rituals that nourish your emotional well-being, not as a luxury, but as a non-negotiable priority. For example, I've learned that I need at least 20 minutes of absolute silence every day to stay emotionally balanced. No phone, no music, no conversation, just me and my thoughts. In the beginning, I felt guilty for wasting this time, but eventually I understood that this space didn't just enhance my emotional state, it made me more productive, more creative, and more fully present in every interaction. The third dimension of becoming truly obsessed with yourself is spiritual growth. And when I say spiritual, I don't necessarily mean religion, though it may include it. I'm talking about your connection to something greater than your immediate problems, to your deeper purpose, to the values that truly guide your life. I vividly remember a conversation with a successful entrepreneur years ago. He had everything society calls success: money, recognition, a thriving business. But he told me something I've never forgotten. He said, "I've achieved everything I thought I wanted, but every morning I wake up feeling empty, like I'm acting in a play I never wrote." So I asked him, "When was the last time you felt connected to something that truly matters beyond material success?" He didn't have an answer. He had become so obsessed with external goals that he had lost connection with his inner purpose. Obsessing over yourself includes asking, over and over again, why am I here? What is my unique contribution to the world? Which values genuinely matter to me? Not the ones others say I should value, but the ones that truly resonate in my heart. These are not questions you answer once and forget. They are questions you revisit constantly as you evolve and grow. Personally, I set aside time every week to reflect on these fundamental questions, not because I lack clarity about my purpose, but because that clarity must be renewed and deepened over time. One of the most powerful realizations you can have is that your spiritual life, your sense of purpose and meaning, is not separate from your practical life. On the contrary, when spiritual clarity is present, every practical decision becomes easier and more precise. You know which opportunities to pursue and which ones to let go. You know where to invest your time and energy. You know which relationships to nurture and which ones to release. Imagine how your life would change if every major decision you made came from a deep clarity about who you are and why you are here. Instead of making choices out of fear, social pressure, or other people's expectations, you'd act from your authentic center. That is the difference between truly living your life and living the life others expect of you. The fourth dimension of becoming fully committed to yourself is your physical evolution. And this is where many people disconnect because they associate taking care of their bodies with vanity or superficiality, but the truth is exactly the opposite. Your body is the vehicle through which you experience everything else in life. If that vehicle isn't working properly, everything else is affected. Let me be direct with you. You cannot have a rich emotional, mental, and spiritual life if your physical body is neglected. Physical energy is the foundation of every other kind of energy. When your body feels strong, vital, and healthy, your mind becomes sharper, your emotions more stable, and your spiritual connection deeper. Personally, I treat my exercise routine and my nutrition with the same seriousness I give to any meaningful commitment in my life, not as something I do when I have time, but as a fundamental priority. At 80 years old, I have more energy than many people half my age because I've made physical health a constructive obsession for decades. But here's what I want you to understand. Becoming deeply committed to your physical health is not about achieving some external standard of beauty or fitness. It's about honoring the only body you have, maximizing your vitality and energy so you can fully contribute to the world. Imagine what would happen if you began treating your body like the sacred temple it is, if you became obsessed with giving it the fuel it needs to function at its best, if you developed daily rituals that honor your physical well-being, not as a burden, but as an investment in everything you want to achieve in life. Now let's talk about the resistance you'll face when you begin this process of becoming truly committed to yourself. Because to be completely honest with you, not everyone will understand or support this transformation. Some people in your life have grown comfortable with the version of you that prioritizes everyone else's needs. When you begin to set boundaries, to say no to things that don't align with your priorities, and to invest time in your personal growth, resistance will inevitably arise. Some people won't understand. I remember when I first started implementing my morning routines dedicated to self-development. My then wife asked me, "Isn't it a little selfish to spend so much time focused on yourself when there are so many other things that need attention?" It was a fair question, one that made me reflect deeply. I explained something that I want you to understand as well. When you become constructively obsessed with yourself, you don't become unavailable to others. You become far more valuable to them. When you consciously work on your mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical development, you have infinitely more to offer in every relationship and responsibility. Carl Jung often reminded us that one cannot touch the soul of another without first discovering their own. It's like the oxygen mask analogy on airplanes. You're told to put your mask on first, not because you are more important than your child, but because if you can't breathe, you won't be able to help anyone else. In the same way, if you don't invest in your own growth and well-being, you will eventually have nothing real left to offer others. The resistance will also come from your own conditioned mind. We carry years, sometimes decades, of programming that teaches us that focusing on ourselves is selfish, that good people always put others first, and that taking care of our own needs is somehow morally inferior. But think of it this way. How many people do you know who spend their entire lives focused on others, yet live filled with resentment, exhaustion, and quiet frustration? How many people have sacrificed so much of themselves for others that they no longer even know who they are? Resentment is always a signal that you have given more than you truly had to give, and paradoxically, you can only give more when you first have more within you. To be healthily obsessed with yourself means ensuring your own tank is full so that you can give to others from abundance rather than emptiness. Jung taught that wholeness is not achieved by ignoring yourself, but by embracing and integrating every part of who you are. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this. A few years ago, I worked with a woman in her late 40s, a single mother of 3. She was exhausted, resentful, and on the verge of an emotional breakdown. She told me, "I don't have time to focus on myself. My children need me." I asked her a question that at first sounded harsh, but was deeply necessary. What kind of example are you setting for your children about how a person should treat themselves? If your children grow up and treat their own families the way you treat yourself, Would you be proud of that? That question struck her like lightning. She realized that by neglecting herself, she was teaching her children that self-care was optional, that their own needs were less important than the needs of others, that being valuable meant sacrificing yourself to exhaustion. We worked together to build small but non-negotiable blocks of time dedicated solely to her growth and well-being. 30 minutes every morning before the kids woke up, an hour on Sundays to do something that nourished her soul, 2 evenings a week for exercise or reading, and what happened was remarkable. She became more patient, more present, and more energetic, not just as a mother, but as a human being. Her children began to respect her in a new way. They saw that their mother valued herself, and that taught them to value themselves too. Her healthy self-focus didn't make her selfish, it made her stronger, wiser, and more loving. Now let's talk about how to cultivate this constructive self-devotion in your own life. The first and most important practice is what I call the sacred hour. It's a period of time each day, ideally at the same time, that you dedicate entirely to your personal development. It's not time for work problems, not time for family plans, not time for chores. It's sacred time, meant only for you. During this hour, you might read books that feed your mind, meditate to strengthen your spiritual connection, exercise to energize your body, or simply reflect on your goals and dreams. The key is consistency and ownership. This time belongs to you alone. When I began this practice decades ago, I chose the early morning. I woke up an hour earlier than usual to read, plan my day, and reconnect with myself. It was difficult at first. My body wanted to stay in bed, my mind told me I had more urgent things to do, but I persisted, and that single hour became the foundation of all the success that followed. Think about how you can apply this in your own life. It doesn't have to be a full hour. Start with 30 minutes, or even 15. What matters is consistency and intention. You are declaring to yourself and to the universe that you are worthy of time devoted solely to your evolution. The second strategy is what I call the regular life audit. Once a week, take a moment to consciously review how you're investing your time and energy. Ask yourself, how much of my time this week was spent doing what truly matters to me versus doing what others expect from me? Carl Jung would say that the path to individuation, the process of becoming your truest self, requires brutal honesty. This reflection is not about judgment, it's about awareness. Because once you become aware, you can no longer live unconsciously. You begin to reclaim your life, piece by piece, choice by choice, moment by moment. And that, in the end, is the true art of living. Not losing yourself in the demands of others, but finding yourself so completely that everything you give flows from a place of wholeness. How much time have I truly invested in my personal growth? In which moments did I feel most alive, most authentic? This is not a practice meant for self-judgment or guilt. It is an invitation to awaken awareness, to see clearly how you are actually living your life. As Carl Jung would remind us, most people wander through years on autopilot, repeating the same habits, trapped in routines that numb the soul, never questioning if the path they walk is truly leading them toward who they are meant to become. A weekly self-audit allows you to make small, yet profoundly meaningful adjustments. Maybe you realize you've spent too much time scrolling through illusions on social media and too little time feeding your mind through reading. Maybe you notice how often you said yes to obligations that drained you and no to opportunities that could have expanded you. These realizations are gold. They give you the power to change your inner direction. Small shifts, when sustained, transform the entire landscape of your life. Personally, I do this reflection every Sunday evening. I review the week that has passed and plan the one ahead based on what I've learned about myself. It's a ritual of alignment. It keeps me connected to my true priorities instead of being dragged by the urgency of others. The next step is to cultivate what Jung would call loving boundaries. To become who you are, you must learn to say no to requests, opportunities, and even relationships that do not resonate with the person you are becoming. This is not selfishness, it is self-respect. It is the recognition that your time and your energy are sacred resources, and how you spend them determines the quality of your existence. One of Jung's great teachings was that every time you say yes to something unaligned, you are unconsciously saying no to your own individuation, to the process of becoming whole. That truth changed my entire approach to commitment. Before accepting any new responsibility, I asked myself, does this bring me closer to my authentic self or pull me further away? Does this use my natural gifts or force me to betray them? Does this energize me or does it quietly drain me? Of course, we all have non-negotiable responsibilities, but within the realm of choice, selectivity becomes an act of wisdom. I have learned to be radically intentional, and that intentionality has not only elevated my life, it has made my contributions to others more powerful and authentic. Imagine if you treated your own commitments this way, if you saw every decision as an investment in the life you wish to create. Let me tell you about one of the most transformative experiences I've ever witnessed. A man of 55 came to me, completely lost. He said, "I've spent my entire adult life trying to be what others needed. The son my parents expected, the husband my wife demanded, the employee my boss admired, but I never stopped to ask myself who I really am." I looked at him and said, "Then let us begin there. If you could design your life from the ground up, free from expectations and fears, what would it look like?" At first, he couldn't answer. He had been disconnected from his essence for so long that his true preferences were buried beneath years of compliance. So I asked him to spend a week simply observing, to notice when he felt alive and when he felt drained, when his actions came from truth and when they came from obligation. Gradually, he began to awaken. He rediscovered his love for photography, something he had abandoned decades earlier for being impractical. He realized he felt alive in deep, meaningful conversations and exhausted in superficial gatherings. He saw that creativity and autonomy were his core values, yet his career offered neither. The transformation was not sudden, but it was profound. He began taking small but consistent steps, picking up his camera again, seeking genuine connections, and reshaping his work to reflect more of his creative spirit. Most importantly, he began making choices rooted in his own values, not in the borrowed expectations of others. 2 years later, he sent me a photograph. He was unrecognizable, not in appearance, but in energy. His eyes held a spark that had long been missing. He wrote, "For the first time in decades, I feel like I am living my life, not playing a role in someone else's story." That is the power of constructive self-obsession, not narcissism, but self-realization. It is not about becoming self-centered. It is about becoming centered in the self, the true self that Jung spoke of, the one that connects you to the wholeness of life itself. Because when you align with who you truly are, You stop merely existing and begin to live with purpose. Now, as we reach the end of this reflection, I want to leave you with both a challenge and a promise. The challenge is this: begin today, not tomorrow, not next week, not when you have time. Dedicate at least 15 minutes to nurturing your own evolution. Read something that enriches your mind. Do something that strengthens your body. Reflect on something that nourishes your soul. And the promise? If you commit to this constructive self-obsession every day, your life will transform in ways you cannot yet imagine. You will cultivate a deep, unshakable confidence that no longer depends on external validation. You will begin making decisions from clarity, not confusion. You will form relationships of greater depth because you will finally relate to others from your authentic self instead of a mask. And most importantly, you will stop living the life that others designed for you and start creating the life that your soul has been waiting to live. That is the difference between merely existing and truly living. If this message has offered you even a single insight that expands your vision, make sure to subscribe and activate the notifications. Choose to become your own priority, not out of vanity, but out of love. Love for yourself and love for the potential contribution you hold within you. Decide now. Act today. Your future self will thank you forever.